Chapter 1: The Rustling in the Void. The static was a constant companion, a white noise shroud clinging to the comms panel like space dust. It had been 3 weeks since the Icarus, a solitary research vessel, had breached the outer atmosphere of Kepler-186f, and 3 weeks since I, Dr. Aris Thorne, exobiologist and sole occupant, had last heard a human voice. Kepler-186f, Earth's hypothetical twin, a siren's call across the light years, a planet teeming with potential, with possibility, and I was rapidly discovering with something else entirely. The mission had been straightforward: a deep scan of the exoplanet's atmosphere and surface, the collection of organic samples, a meticulous cataloging of any signs of life, however rudimentary. The UNSA, in its infinite bureaucratic wisdom, had deemed a solo mission the most cost-effective way to achieve these goals. I, driven by a lifetime of fervent belief in the existence of extraterrestrial life, had readily agreed. I was, after all, accustomed to solitude. My wife, Ilara, had passed away 3 years prior, lost to a sudden and aggressive form of cancer, and since then the vast emptiness of space had felt almost familiar. The Icarus itself was a marvel of engineering, a self-sustaining ecosystem encased in hardened titanium and layered shielding. It was my home, my laboratory, my sanctuary, and increasingly my prison. The first week had been a blur of methodical data collection. Kepler-186f, as seen from orbit, was breathtaking. Swirling emerald oceans, vast continents cloaked in vibrant green, and towering mountain ranges that pierced the cloud cover like jagged teeth. The initial atmospheric scans revealed a breathable atmosphere, rich in oxygen and nitrogen, and teeming with complex organic compounds. My excitement was palpable. I felt Ilara beside me, a shared whisper of anticipation at the culmination of a lifelong dream. The surface scans, however, painted a more unsettling picture. The initial readings were anomalous, patchy areas of intense electromagnetic activity clustered around specific geographical locations, mostly in the planet's northern hemisphere. These anomalies were dismissed as sensor malfunctions, glitches in the system caused by the intense radiation emanating from the red dwarf star around which the planet orbited. I recalibrated the sensors, ran diagnostics, and reinitiated the scans. The anomalies persisted. Ignoring the growing unease prickling at the back of my neck, I prepared for the first surface expedition. The Icarus was equipped with a heavily armored rover, the Argonaut, capable of traversing even the most treacherous terrain. I chose a landing site in a relatively flat region, a vast grassland bordering a sprawling, seemingly lifeless forest. The descent was nerve-wracking. The Icarus shuddered violently as it sliced through the exoplanet's atmosphere, the heat shields glowing a fierce orange. I wrestled with the controls, my heart pounding in my chest, until finally, with a bone-jarring thud, the ship settled onto the alien soil. Stepping out of the airlock onto the surface of Kepler-186f was a moment I had dreamt of for years. The air was cool and crisp, with a strange metallic tang. The sky, a muted crimson, cast long, eerie shadows across the landscape. The silence was profound, broken only by the whirring of the Icarus life support systems. The grassland stretched out before me, an ocean of waving, rust-colored stalks that reached almost to my chest. The forest loomed in the distance, a dark and impenetrable wall. I took a deep breath, savoring the alien air, and activated the Argonaut's remote control. The rover rumbled to life, its headlights cutting through the dim light. The first few hours were uneventful. I collected soil samples, analyzed the local flora, and cataloged the various atmospheric conditions. The data was fascinating, confirming the presence of complex organic molecules and hinting at the possibility of microbial life. But as the sun began to set, casting the landscape in an even more unsettling hue, I started to feel watched. It was a subtle sensation, a prickling at the back of my neck, a feeling of unseen eyes observing my every move. I dismissed it as fatigue, the product of long hours and the isolation of the mission. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing minute. As I prepared to return to the Icarus, a new sound cut through the silence. A rustling, faint, almost imperceptible but definitely there. It seemed to be coming from the edge of the forest, a whispering in the undergrowth. I froze, my hand hovering over the Argonaut's control panel. The rustling grew louder, closer. I activated the rover's spotlight, sweeping it across the dark tree line. Nothing, just the dense, unyielding foliage. "Sensors, activate perimeter scan," I muttered into my comms. The rover's sensors whirred to life, scanning the surrounding area for any signs of movement, any anomalies. The results came back negative. "False alarm," I told myself, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Just the wind. But there was no wind. The air was still, silent, save for the rustling. It was closer now, much closer. I could almost feel it, a presence lurking just beyond the edge of the light. I scrambled into the Argonaut, slamming the hatch shut and engaging the locking mechanism. My hands trembled as I activated the rover's thrusters, sending it hurtling back towards the Icarus. The rustling followed, a persistent whisper in my ears. I glanced back, peering into the darkness, but saw nothing. Just the waving stalks of grass and the looming silhouette of the forest. Back inside the Icarus, I reviewed the sensor data, searching for any explanation for the rustling sound. Nothing. The readings were normal, almost too normal. It was as if the planet itself was deliberately concealing something. Over the next few days, the rustling became a constant presence. I heard it during every surface expedition, every orbital scan, every moment of quiet contemplation. It was always there, a whispering in the void, a subtle reminder that I was not alone. The UNSA dismissed my concerns as stress-induced hallucinations, urging me to focus on the mission objectives. But I knew what I was hearing. I knew that something was out there, something intelligent, something malevolent. I started to experience vivid nightmares, visions of twisted figures lurking in the forest, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light, dreams of being chased through endless corridors, the rustling sound growing louder, closer, until it filled my entire being. The dreams were becoming increasingly real, bleeding into my waking hours. I would find myself staring into the darkness, convinced that I could see movement in the shadows. I started to lose track of time, unable to distinguish between reality and hallucination. One evening, while reviewing the latest sensor data, I noticed something strange. A new anomaly located deep within the forest, in the same region where I had first heard the rustling sound. It was a faint energy signature, pulsing erratically, almost as if it were breathing. I knew I had to investigate. Despite the growing dread that threatened to consume me, despite the UNSA's explicit instructions to avoid the forest, I knew that I had to find the source of the rustling. It was no longer a question of scientific curiosity. It was a matter of survival. I prepped the Argonaut, loading it with extra fuel, weapons, and sensor equipment. I knew that I was venturing into the unknown, into a territory that might be far more dangerous than I could possibly imagine. As I prepared to leave, I recorded a final message, a testament to my sanity, a farewell to a world I might never see again. This is Dr. Aris Thorne, signing off from the Icarus orbiting Kepler-186f. I'm about to embark on a solo expedition into the planet's northern forest to investigate a series of unexplained anomalies. I believe that these anomalies represent a significant threat, not only to this mission, but perhaps to all of humanity. If I do not return, I want the world to know that I did not falter. I faced the unknown with courage and conviction. And I hope with all my heart that my sacrifice will not be in vain. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and whispered a silent prayer to Alara, asking for her strength, her guidance, her love. Then I opened the airlock, stepped into the Argonaut, and drove into the darkness. The rustling sound grew louder, welcoming me home. Chapter 2: The Forest of Whispers. The Argonaut was a beast, built to withstand the harshest conditions. Its reinforced hull, shielded from the planet's radiation, hummed with power as it carved a path through the rust-colored grasslands. The terrain was deceptively smooth, a carpet of alien vegetation that concealed unseen dips and swells, forcing me to navigate with cautious precision. The sky above remained a perpetual twilight, the crimson sun casting long, distorted shadows, making the forest ahead seem to writhe and breathe with a life of its own. As I approached the tree line, the rustling intensified. It wasn't just the whisper of the wind anymore. It was a chorus, a cacophony of unseen voices that seemed to emanate from every direction. It was a symphony of whispers, murmurs, and sighs, a chorus that played on my frayed nerves, chipping away at the edges of my sanity. I activated the rover's high-powered searchlights, cutting through the encroaching gloom. The forest up close was a tangle of impossibly thick vegetation. Towering, obsidian-like trees with gnarled, skeletal branches, their leaves a deep, unsettling shade of purple. The undergrowth was a dense mat of thorny vines and strange, bioluminescent fungi that pulsed with an ethereal light. The air grew heavy and humid, thick with the scent of decaying leaves and something else. Something metallic, something like blood. I stopped the Argonaut at the edge of the forest, the searchlights illuminating a narrow, winding path that snaked into the darkness. The path seemed to beckon me forward, to draw me into the heart of the unknown. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was the way. I ran a final systems check, making sure the Argonauts' weapons were armed, the sensors calibrated, and the oxygen supply at maximum capacity. I double-checked the emergency beacon, knowing that it was unlikely to work, that if I got into trouble out here, I would be utterly alone. "Let's do this," I muttered to myself, my voice barely a whisper. I took a deep breath, shifted the Argonaut into gear, and started down the path. The rustling sound enveloped me, a constant presence that filled the rover's cabin. I tried to focus on the road ahead, to ignore the whispering voices, but it was impossible. They were everywhere, inside my head, behind my back, in the very fabric of the universe. The path twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the forest. The trees grew taller, their branches intertwining overhead, blocking out the crimson sky. The forest floor was a carpet of decaying leaves, crunching under the Argonaut's treads. The air grew colder, the silence punctuated only by the rustling and the rhythmic thumping of my own heart. I encountered the first sign of the anomaly about an hour into my journey. A massive obsidian tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted, standing in the middle of the path, blocking my way. Its surface was covered in a network of intricate carvings, symbols that I didn't recognize, but that seemed to vibrate with a dark, ancient energy. I stopped the Argonaut and activated the tree's sensor readings. The data was off the charts. The electromagnetic activity was intense, the energy signature pulsing with a regular rhythm, mirroring the pattern I had observed in the orbital scans. I felt a sudden urge to reach out and touch the tree, to feel its energy, to understand its secrets. I fought back the impulse, knowing that it could be a trap. "Stay focused, Thorn," I muttered, forcing myself to remain rational. "This is not a game." I bypassed the tree, navigating around it, continuing down the path. The rustling grew louder, the whispers more insistent. I started to see things in the periphery of my vision, fleeting glimpses of movement, shadows that danced in the darkness. The path eventually opened into a clearing, a vast expanse of dead vegetation, the ground covered in a thick layer of ash. In the center of the clearing stood a structure, a colossal monolith of black, polished stone, its surface as smooth as glass. It was easily twice the height of the Argonaut, and its shape was vaguely rectangular, with no visible windows or doors. As I approached the monolith, the rustling reached a fever pitch. The whispers coalesced into a chorus of voices, chanting in an unknown language. The air crackled with energy, the scent of blood growing stronger, making my lungs burn. I stopped the Argonaut and cut the engines. The silence was deafening, broken only by the chanting. The monolith seemed to hum with power, radiating an aura of both terror and fascination. I raised the rover's optical sensors, zooming in on the monolith's surface. I saw carvings on the stone, similar to the ones I had observed on the tree, but more intricate, more disturbing. They depicted grotesque figures, twisted and distorted, engaged in acts of unspeakable violence. The chanting grew louder, the vibrations intensifying. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to get closer to the monolith, to touch its surface, to understand its meaning. I knew that I shouldn't, that it was a siren's call, a trap designed to lure me into the darkness. But I couldn't resist. Damn it, I swore, fighting against the compulsion. I engaged the Argonaut's low-speed drive, slowly maneuvering the rover towards the monolith. As I approached, the chanting became deafening, filling the cabin with a chorus of torment. The carvings on the monolith seemed to shift and change, the figures writhing and twisting, their eyes fixated on me. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the monolith's surface. The cabin of the Argonaut was flooded with a wave of intense energy, causing my vision to blur and my head to spin. I felt a searing pain, as if my brain was being fried by an electric current. I cried out, instinctively throwing my hands over my face as the rover's internal systems began to fail. The lights flickered, the instruments went dark, and the comms panel erupted with static. The rustling ceased. The chanting stopped. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the energy surge ended. The light receded. I lowered my hands, my vision slowly returning. The cabin was dark, the instruments dead. The Argonaut was immobile, its engines offline. I was stranded, alone in the heart of the alien forest. I tried to regain control, restarting the Argonaut systems. Nothing. The rover was dead. Panic began to claw at my throat. I was trapped, cut off from the Icarus, vulnerable to whatever horrors lurked in the darkness. "No," I whispered, fighting against the despair. "Not like this." I grabbed my emergency kit, a small backpack containing a flashlight, a survival knife, a first aid kit, and a handheld comms unit. I had to get out of the Argonaut and find a way to signal the Icarus. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the rover's hatch and opened the door. The forest air rushed in, cold and humid, carrying the scent of decay and the lingering taste of metal. The monolith loomed before me, its surface still radiating a faint, unsettling glow. The carvings seemed to writhe and twist, their figures mocking my fear. The forest was silent, eerily silent. The rustling was gone, the whispers had ceased, but I knew with a chilling certainty that I was not alone. I activated the flashlight, casting a beam of light into the darkness. The beam illuminated the path ahead, revealing a narrow trail that led away from the clearing, into the depths of the forest. The path looked as if it had been worn by some creature that had long lived here, something that has walked on the same soil I was walking on. I knew that I had a choice: to stay in the clearing and wait for whatever awaited me, or to venture into the unknown, to follow the path and try to find a way out. I took a step forward, then another, each footstep crunching on the dead leaves. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew with a chilling certainty that I was walking into a trap, but I had no other choice. I had to keep moving. I started to walk, following the path into the forest of whispers. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the beam of my flashlight. The forest seemed to press in on me, the trees towering over me like silent sentinels. The silence was broken, not by whispers, but by another sound, the sound of something moving in the darkness. Something large, something heavy, something that was stalking me. I stopped, listening intently, trying to locate the source of the noise. The sound ceased. I continued to walk. Then I heard it again, closer this time. The sound of something dragging itself across the forest floor, a low, guttural growl. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine, a sound that promised death. I knew then with a chilling certainty that the rustling was not just a sound. It was a harbinger, a warning. And now the horror had begun. Chapter 3: Echoes of the Damned. The flashlight beam trembled in my grasp, jittering across the uneven ground, barely piercing the suffocating darkness. The guttural growl echoed again, closer still, laced with a hunger that resonated deep within my primal fear. It wasn't just the sound of an animal. It was something darker, something intelligent, something that understood the terror it was inflicting. My breath hitched in my throat, a strangled gasp lost in the oppressive silence between the growls. I scanned the surrounding trees, the beam of light dancing frantically across their gnarled surfaces, searching for any sign of the creature. But the forest held its secrets close, concealing whatever lurked within its shadowed depths. I forced myself to move, to continue down the path, my steps measured and deliberate. I knew that running would only make me an easier target, that the creature would be able to hear me, to track me with greater ease. The path twisted and turned, leading me through a maze of twisted trees and thorny vines. The air grew thicker, heavier, saturated with the scent of decay and the metallic tang of blood. I could feel the creature's presence growing stronger, closing in on me, its breath hot on the back of my neck. I reached a fork in the path, two trails diverging into the darkness. Which way to go? I had no idea. I activated the handheld comms unit, hopping to reach the Icarus to get some guidance, some assistance. "Icarus, this is Thorn," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Do you read me? Over." Static, just the endless mocking static. The comms were useless. I was truly alone. I chose a path at random, the one that seemed to lead deeper into the forest, the one that felt colder. As I continued down the trail, the growling intensified, growing louder with each passing step. I could hear the creature moving behind me, its heavy footfalls crunching on the dead leaves, its breath ragged and uneven. Then suddenly, the path opened into another clearing, a small, circular space surrounded by towering trees. In the center of the clearing stood a crumbling stone well, its surface covered in moss and lichen. The well seemed ancient, as if it had been there for centuries, a silent witness to countless horrors. I stopped at the edge of the clearing, my flashlight beam illuminating the well. The growling ceased. The forest held its breath. I approached the well cautiously, my hand gripping the survival knife. The air grew colder, the scent of blood stronger, almost overpowering. I peered down into the well, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The well was deep, impossibly deep. I couldn't see the bottom. I could only see the dark, still water reflecting my own terrified face. As I stared into the well, I started to hear something. A faint, echoing sound, a whispering that seemed to emanate from the depths. It was the same whispering I had heard before, but different somehow. It was more distinct, more articulate. I leaned closer, straining to hear the words. They were faint, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. They were voices, human voices, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. The voices grew louder, the chanting more insistent. I started to feel dizzy, disoriented. The well seemed to pulse with energy, radiating a cold, unnatural light. Suddenly, I saw something in the water, a reflection, not of my own face, but of something else. A twisted, grotesque figure, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, its mouth contorted into a silent scream. I recoiled in horror, stumbling backward away from the well. The chanting reached a fever pitch. The well seemed to vibrate, shaking the very ground beneath my feet. The figure in the water reached out, its hand extending towards me, its fingers long and skeletal. I screamed, a primal cry of terror as the figure's hand grasped my arm, its touch cold as ice. I tried to pull away, to break free from its grasp, but it was too strong. The figure pulled me closer, dragging me towards the well. I struggled, kicking and thrashing, but it was no use. The figure was relentless, its grip tightening on my arm, its cold breath on my face. I was pulled to the edge of the well, the dark water swirling below, beckoning me to join the twisted figure in its watery grave. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable, as the figure prepared to drag me into the depths. Then suddenly the chanting stopped. The figure released my arm. I stumbled backward, collapsing onto the ground, gasping for breath. I opened my eyes. The well was silent, still and dark. The figure was gone. The voices had ceased. The forest was quiet again, eerily quiet. The growling was gone. The creature had vanished. I lay on the ground for a long time, trying to catch my breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had it been a hallucination, a waking nightmare, or had it been something real, something tangible? I didn't know. All I knew was that I had to get out of there. I had to escape from the forest, to find a way back to the Icarus. I stood up, my legs trembling, and started to run. I ran blindly, recklessly, without any sense of direction, my only goal to put as much distance as possible between myself and the well. I ran for what seemed like hours, dodging trees and leaping over fallen logs, my breath ragged and uneven. The forest seemed to mock my efforts, its darkness pressing in on me, its silence amplifying my fear. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the running grew calmer. It felt as if I was no longer running but floating. As the floating got to an apex, my surrounding turned more bright. I found myself standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground falling away sharply beneath my feet. Below me lay a vast canyon, its depths shrouded in darkness. The canyon seemed to stretch out for miles, disappearing into the horizon. The air was colder up here, the wind whipping around me, carrying the scent of ice and snow. I could hear the sound of rushing water, a torrent of liquid coursing through the depths of the canyon. I stepped closer to the edge of the cliff, peering down into the darkness. I couldn't see the bottom. I could only hear the roar of the water, a deafening cacophony that seemed to shake the very ground beneath my feet. Then I saw something in the darkness, a light, a faint, flickering glow emanating from the depths of the canyon. It was a small light, but it was definitely there. A beacon in the darkness, a sign of hope. I knew that I had to get to that light. It was my only chance. I had to find a way down into the canyon. But how? The cliff was sheer, impossible to climb. There was no path, no trail, no way to descend into the depths. I scanned the surrounding area, searching for any sign of a way down. And then I saw it. A rope bridge suspended across the canyon, its wooden planks creaking in the wind. The bridge looked old, rickety, and dangerous. But it was there, my only path to salvation. I hesitated, weighing my options. To stay on the cliff, alone in the darkness, or to cross the bridge, to venture into the unknown. The decision was agonizing, but I knew what I had to do. Taking a deep breath, I started to walk towards the bridge. Each step was hesitant, uncertain, as I approached the edge of the abyss. As the bridge began to sway, it felt as if the well was still pulling me in. The difference now is that there is a deep, endless canyon. Chapter 4: The Bridge of Whispers and Bone. The rope bridge groaned under my weight, a symphony of protesting wood and fraying hemp. Each step sent tremors through the structure, the canyon winds whipping around me, threatening to hurl me into the black abyss below. The small flickering light, my beacon of hope, seemed miles away, a distant promise in a sea of despair. My hands, slick with cold sweat, gripped the weathered ropes, my knuckles white. I focused on the next step, the next plank, trying to ignore the dizzying drop beneath me, the whispering wind that seemed to mock my every move. The bridge swayed violently with each gust of wind, throwing me from side to side. I fought to maintain my balance, my muscles screaming in protest, as the planks beneath my feet shifted and buckled. Several were missing entirely, leaving gaping holes that offered a terrifying glimpse into the darkness below. As I made my way further onto the bridge, I began to notice something else. The planks beneath my feet were not just old and weathered, they were carved. Each plank was covered in intricate symbols, similar to the ones I had seen on the monolith and the obsidian tree, but smaller, more subtle. I shone my flashlight on the carvings, examining them more closely. They depicted grotesque figures, twisted and distorted, engaged in acts of unspeakable cruelty. The same disturbing imagery that had haunted me since arriving on Kepler-186f. The carvings seemed to writhe and change in the flickering light, their eyes following my every move. I felt a sudden wave of nausea, a sense of overwhelming dread, as I realized what the planks were made of. They weren't wood, they were bone. Human bone, or something disturbingly similar. The bridge wasn't just a path across the canyon. It was a monument to suffering, a testament to the horrors that lurked within the forest. Each step I took was a desecration, a violation of the countless souls who had perished in this forsaken place. The whispering wind intensified, swirling around me, carrying the voices of the damned. I could hear their cries, their screams, their pleas for mercy. The voices were overwhelming, filling my head with a cacophony of torment. I pressed on, my resolve wavering, my sanity fraying at the edges. The light at the end of the bridge seemed further away than ever, a cruel mirage in the darkness. Then I saw something else. A figure standing in the middle of the bridge, blocking my path. It was a tall, gaunt figure, shrouded in shadow, its face obscured by a tattered hood. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was it? What did it want? The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, silently watching me. I raised my flashlight, shining it on the figure's face. The hood fell back, revealing a skull, its eye sockets empty, its teeth bared in a silent grin. It was a skeleton, animated by some dark force, a guardian of the bridge, a gatekeeper to the abyss. The skeleton raised its hand, its bony fingers pointing towards me. A low, guttural growl emanated from its empty chest cavity. The creature from the forest, it had found me again. I knew that I couldn't fight it. I was weak, exhausted, and unarmed. My only chance was to run, to try to reach the end of the bridge, to escape from its grasp. I turned and fled, my feet pounding on the bone planks, the bridge swaying violently beneath me. The skeleton pursued, its bony feet clicking on the planks, its growl growing louder with each passing step. The wind howled around me, the voices of the damned screaming in my ears. The skeleton was gaining on me, its skeletal hand reaching out, its bony fingers closing around my ankle. I stumbled, falling to my knees, the bridge swaying wildly beneath me. The skeleton loomed over me, its empty eye sockets burning with an unnatural light. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable as the skeleton prepared to strike. Then suddenly, the bridge lurched violently, throwing me forward, sending the skeleton tumbling into the abyss. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing onto the ropes, my body shaking uncontrollably. The bridge was swaying even more violently than before, threatening to collapse at any moment. I looked back. The skeleton was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I didn't know what had happened, what had caused the bridge to lurch, but I wasn't going to question it. I turned and ran, putting as much distance as possible between myself and the skeleton, the memory of that creature still fresh in my mind. I ran until I reached the end of the bridge, collapsing onto the solid ground, gasping for breath. I was safe for now, but I knew that the forest was far from over, and that the skeleton, or something even worse, was waiting for me in the darkness. I looked ahead to the location where the light was. It feels as if I am in the middle of another dimension, far from the land, the cliff, and the bridge. It felt as if those were a test of my sanity, a test to determine how I would proceed. Chapter 5. The Labyrinth of Whispers and Lies. The end of the rope bridge wasn't the sanctuary I had desperately hoped for. Instead, it deposited me at the entrance of a vast, subterranean complex. The flickering light I'd seen from the cliff originated from within, beckoning me into a labyrinth carved from the very rock of the canyon walls. The air here was stagnant, thick with the smell of damp earth, mildew, and something else. Something acrid like burnt metal and ozone. The temperature plummeted, a bone-chilling cold that seeped into my very marrow. I activated the flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom, revealing a narrow, winding passage that disappeared into the heart of the mountain. The walls of the passage were smooth, unnaturally smooth, as if they had been polished by some unknown force. Strange symbols were etched into the surface, glowing faintly in the dark, similar to the ones I had seen before, but more intricate, more alive. They pulsed with a subtle energy, vibrating in the periphery of my vision, making my head ache. As I ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the whispering returned, louder than ever before. The voices swirled around me, murmuring secrets, telling lies, weaving a tapestry of deceit and despair. I tried to block them out, to focus on the path ahead, but they were relentless, insistent, chipping away at my resolve. The passage branched off in multiple directions, forming a complex network of tunnels and chambers. I had no map, no compass, no way to know which way to go. I was completely lost, adrift in a sea of stone and shadows. I chose a path at random, my footsteps echoing in the silence, each footstep a betrayal of the trust I had for myself. The tunnel narrowed, the walls closing in on me, squeezing the air from my lungs. I felt claustrophobic, trapped, as if the mountain itself was trying to suffocate me. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. The chamber was filled with strange, alien technology. Consoles covered in glowing buttons and flickering screens, machines humming with an unnatural energy, devices that defied my understanding of physics and engineering. In the center of the chamber stood a massive machine, a colossal contraption of metal and glass, its purpose inscrutable. It was shaped like a sphere, its surface covered in intricate circuitry and pulsating lights. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting the sphere to the various consoles and machines. The machine seemed to hum with power, radiating an intense energy that made my skin tingle. The whispering reached a fever pitch, the voices chanting in unison, their words echoing in my mind. As I approached the sphere, I saw something inside. A figure, floating in the center of the machine, suspended in a clear liquid. It was a human, or at least what had once been a human. The body was emaciated, its skin stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes were closed, its face contorted in a silent scream. Wires and tubes snaked into its flesh, connecting it to the machine. I recognized the face. It was Ilara. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Ilara was dead. She had died 3 years ago in a hospital bed, surrounded by family and friends. How could she be here, floating in this alien machine on a distant planet, light years from Earth? "No," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. "This can't be real." The chanting grew louder, the voices more insistent. They were telling me something, revealing a truth that I didn't want to hear. Ilara wasn't dead. She had been taken, kidnapped by these aliens, these creatures that had lured me to this forsaken planet. They had experimented on her, tortured her, transformed her into this grotesque mockery of her former self. Rage surged through me, a burning fire that consumed my fear. I wanted to destroy them, to tear them limb from limb, to avenge Ilara's suffering. I reached out, my hand trembling towards the sphere. I wanted to touch it, to break it, to free Ilara from its grasp. Then a voice echoed in my mind, clear and distinct, overriding the chanting. "Don't," the voice said, "it's a lie." I stopped, my hand hovering inches from the sphere. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I am you," the voice said. "I am the part of you that still clings to reason, the part that refuses to believe their lies." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "What lies?" "They are manipulating you, Thorn," the voice said. "They are playing on your grief, your guilt, your desire to see Alara again. They are showing you what you want to see, but it's not real." "But I saw her," I said, my voice trembling. "She's in there, floating in that machine." "That's not Alara," the voice said. "That's a projection, an illusion designed to break you, to control you." "How do you know?" I asked, my mind reeling. "Because I've been through this before," the voice said. "I know their tricks, I know their lies." "But if that's not Alara, then who is it?" I asked. "It doesn't matter," the voice said. "What matters is that you don't fall for their trap. You have to resist, Thorn, you have to fight back." The chanting intensified, the voices drowning out the voice in my mind. I started to feel dizzy again, disoriented. The sphere pulsed with energy, its lights growing brighter, its influence growing stronger. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the chanting, trying to focus on the voice in my mind. "How do I fight back?" I asked. "What do I do?" "Destroy the machine," the voice said. "Destroy the source of their power, destroy their lies." I opened my eyes. The sphere loomed before me, its influence overpowering, its lies seductive. But I knew what I had to do. I had to trust the voice in my mind, to resist the temptation, to fight back against the darkness. I reached for my survival knife, my hand trembling. I raised the knife above my head, bracing myself. I remember all the trainings I had, all the work I had completed. With the machine destroyed, there is no guarantee what I would find outside. Then I plunged the knife into the heart of the sphere. Chapter 6: Shattered Illusions, Lingering Shadows. The impact reverberated through the chamber, a jarring clang that echoed off the polished walls. The sphere shuddered violently, its lights flickering erratically, the chanting abruptly cut short. The liquid within the sphere turned a murky black, obscuring the figure of Alara. Alarms blared, red lights flashing, bathing the chamber in a strobe-like intensity. The alien machines around me sputtered and died, their humming replaced by a disconcerting silence. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and burning metal. As the sphere began to crack, spiderwebs of fissures spreading across its surface, the image of Alara dissolved, replaced by a swirling vortex of darkness. The vortex pulsed with an unholy energy, drawing me towards it, tempting me with promises of reunion and solace. The voice in my mind returned, stronger now, more resolute. "Don't look, Thorn, look away." I heeded the warning, tearing my gaze from the vortex, focusing on the surrounding chamber. The symbols etched into the walls seemed to writhe and twist, their malevolent energy growing stronger, feeding off the chaos and destruction. The sphere imploded, shattering into a million pieces, showering the chamber with shards of glass and metallic debris. The vortex vanished, leaving behind only the lingering scent of death and despair. The red lights died, plunging the chamber into near darkness. The only light came from my flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom, revealing the devastation around me. The machines were dead, the consoles silent. The chamber was eerily still, the whispering gone, replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. I was alone, or so I thought. As I took a tentative step forward, a new sound reached my ears. A soft, shuffling noise coming from the shadows. It wasn't the guttural growl of the creature from the forest, nor the chanting of the alien voices. It was something else, something human. I raised the flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating a figure huddled in the corner of the chamber. It was a woman, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow, her clothes torn and ragged. She looked up at me, her eyes widening in fear. She whimpered, shrinking back into the shadows, as if expecting to be attacked. "It's okay," I said, my voice soft, reassuring. "I'm not going to hurt you. Who are you? What are you doing here?" The woman hesitated, her eyes darting nervously around the chamber. She seemed terrified, traumatized. They brought me here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They took me from my home, from my family." "Who took you?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who are they?" The keepers," she said, her voice trembling. "They serve the old ones, the ones who dwell in the darkness." "The old ones?" I asked, confused. "What are you talking about?" They want to awaken them," she said. "They want to bring them back into this world, to unleash their power upon humanity." "Who are these keepers?" I pressed, my mind racing. Were they the same beings who had brought Alara here? Were they the source of the rustling, the whispers, the nightmares that had plagued me since arriving on Kepler-186f? They are everywhere," she said, her voice growing more frantic. "They are in the government, in the military, in the corporations. They control everything. They have been preparing for this for centuries." Her words were unsettling, bordering on delusional. Was she insane? Had she been driven mad by her captivity, or was she telling the truth? "How long have you been here?" I asked, changing tack. "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. Time has no meaning here. It could be days, weeks, months, maybe even years." "What's your name?" I asked. "Sarah," she said, her voice barely audible. "My name is Sarah." "Sarah," I said, repeating her name, trying to establish a connection. "Can you tell me anything about this place, about the keepers, about the old ones?" Sarah hesitated, her eyes darting around the chamber, as if she were afraid of being overheard. This is a prison," she said, her voice growing slightly stronger. "A prison for the old ones, and for those who stand in their way." "A prison?" I asked, my mind reeling. "You mean the old ones are trapped here, on Kepler-186f?" Sarah nodded, her eyes widening in terror. "They are ancient, powerful, beyond our comprehension. They were banished to this world long ago, by a force even greater than theirs." "And the keepers?" I asked. "They want to release them?" "Yes," Sarah said. "They believe that the old ones will reward them, that they will grant them power, dominion over the earth." "But why?" I asked, my voice rising in frustration. "Why would anyone want to unleash such evil upon the world?" "They are fanatics," Sarah said. "They are blinded by their faith, by their belief in the old ones. They believe that they are doing what is necessary, that they are saving humanity from itself. Her words were chilling, a glimpse into a world of conspiracy and madness. I didn't know what to believe, but I knew that I had to get Sarah out of there. She was my only lead, my only hope of understanding what was happening on Kepler-186f. "Come on," I said, extending my hand towards her. "We need to get out of here. We need to warn the Earth." Sarah hesitated, her eyes fixed on my hand. She seemed afraid to trust me, afraid to hope. "Can I trust you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," I said, my voice firm, sincere. "You can trust me, I promise." Sarah took my hand, her grip weak, uncertain. I pulled her to her feet, supporting her as she stumbled. "Let's go," I said, my voice filled with determination. "Let's get out of this labyrinth and find a way home." I lead the way, flashlight in hand, Sarah following close behind. We ventured back into the tunnels, the whispering growing fainter, the shadows less oppressive. As we made our way through the labyrinth, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The keepers were out there, somewhere, waiting for us, their eyes fixed on our every move. I knew that we were running out of time. We had to find a way out of the labyrinth, to escape from Kepler-186f, before the keepers could unleash the old ones upon the world. The echoes of the destruction behind me seemed to fuel a fire, a need to move, a need to run, a need to just get out. Sarah, although a bit slower now, seems to have a renewed sense of energy. Perhaps this means there is a way out, that something good is waiting ahead. Chapter 7: The Whispers of the Engine. Navigating the labyrinth with Sarah proved challenging. She was weak, disoriented, and plagued by vivid flashbacks of her captivity. Every shadow seemed to trigger a new wave of terror. Every echoing sound sent her cowering against the walls. I had to balance my need for speed with her physical and mental limitations, stopping frequently to offer her water, reassurance, and brief moments of respite. As we moved deeper, the labyrinth began to change. The smooth, polished walls gave way to rough-hewn rock, the tunnels narrowing, the air growing even more stagnant. We passed through chambers filled with strange, alien artifacts, shimmering crystals, pulsating orbs, and devices that resembled musical instruments, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings. Sarah seemed to recognize some of the artifacts, whispering their names in a language I didn't understand. She said that they were tools, used by the keepers to communicate with the old ones, to channel their power, to manipulate reality. I tried to ignore her ramblings, focusing on finding a way out of the labyrinth. But her words lingered in my mind, planting seeds of doubt and fear. Was this place really a prison? Or was it something else, something far more sinister? After what felt like hours of wandering, we reached a dead end. A massive stone wall blocking our path, its surface covered in intricate carvings. Sarah gasped, recoiling in horror. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "We can't go that way. That's the Gate of Souls." "The Gate of Souls?" I asked, confused. "What is it?" "It's a portal," she said, her eyes widening in terror. "A gateway to another dimension, to the realm of the Old Ones." "A portal?" I asked, my mind reeling. "You mean There's a way out of this place, a way to escape Kepler-186f. Sarah shook her head, her face pale. No, she said, it's not a way out, it's a way in. A way for the old ones to enter our world. But if it's a portal, then maybe we can use it, I said, clinging to the hope that it offered. Maybe we can find a way to close it, to prevent the old ones from escaping. No, Sarah said, her voice pleading. It's too dangerous. We can't risk it. We have to find another way. I hesitated, weighing my options. Sarah was terrified, convinced that the Gate of Souls was a death trap. But it was the only lead we had, the only chance of escaping Kepler-186f. I'm sorry, Sarah, I said, my voice firm. But I have to try, I can't just give up. I approached the wall, examining the carvings more closely. They were more complex, more disturbing than anything I had seen before. They depicted grotesque figures, engaged in acts of unimaginable depravity. The energy radiating from the wall was intense, making my skin crawl. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched the wall. A surge of energy coursed through my body, sending me reeling backward. Visions flooded my mind, images of destruction, chaos, and unspeakable horror. I stumbled back, collapsing onto the ground, gasping for breath. Sarah rushed to my side, her face filled with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked. "What happened?" I saw something," I said, my voice shaking. "A vision of the future, a future filled with darkness and despair." "I told you," Sarah said, her voice pleading. "It's too dangerous. We have to go back." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I can't give up. I have to find a way to close this gate." I stood up, my determination renewed. I knew that I was taking a risk, that I was venturing into the unknown. But I had to try. I had to prevent the horrors I had seen in my vision from coming to pass. I examined the wall more closely, searching for a way to activate the portal or to shut it down. Then I saw something. A small indentation hidden beneath a layer of dust and grime. I reached out and pressed the indentation. The wall began to tremble, the carvings glowing brighter. A low humming sound filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. The wall shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a swirling vortex of light and energy. The Gate of Souls was open. I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. "Come on, Sarah," I said. "Let's see what's on the other side." I stepped through the gate, Sarah following close behind. The world dissolved around us, replaced by a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. Then just as suddenly it stopped. We were standing in a new chamber, a vast, cavernous space filled with strange, alien technology. In the center of the chamber stood a massive engine, humming with an unholy power. The engine was shaped like a sphere, similar to the one I had destroyed, but larger, more complex. Wires and tubes snaked across the floor, connecting the engine to various consoles and machines. The whispering returned, louder than ever before. The voices swirled around me, murmuring secrets, telling lies, weaving a tapestry of deceit and despair. Then I saw something on the other side of the room. It was as if I was standing at the base of a control room. A figure standing in front of the window, silhouetted by the engine's light. a familiar figure. My father. He turned to face me, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. He smiled, a cold, cruel smile that sent shivers down my spine. "Hello, Ethan," he said, his voice smooth, seductive. "Welcome home." And in that moment, I knew that everything I thought I knew was a lie, that my father wasn't who I thought he was, that the keepers weren't the enemy, that I was. Chapter 8: The Truth of the Thorn. The revelation slammed into me like a physical blow, staggering me back. My father, here, on Kepler-186f, a keeper, the architect of my nightmares, the puppeteer behind the whispering voices, the mastermind behind this entire terrifying charade. The world seemed to tilt, the engine's hum growing into a deafening roar. Sarah gasped beside me, collapsing to her knees, clutching her head in her hands. "No, no, no," she moaned. "Not again." I ignored her, my gaze locked on my father, trying to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the monster standing before me. The salt and pepper hair, the plaid shirt, the work boots, all a carefully constructed facade, a mask concealing a horrifying truth. "Dad," I stammered, the word feeling foreign and wrong on my tongue. "What's going on? Why are you here?" He chuckled, a low, chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. "Ethan, my son," he said, his voice dripping with false affection. "So good of you to finally join us. We've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" I asked, my mind reeling. "What are you talking about? What is this place?" "This," he said, gesturing around the chamber with a sweeping motion, "is the engine. The key to unlocking the old ones, to ushering in a new era of enlightenment for humanity." "Enlightenment," I scoffed. "You call this enlightenment? This is madness. You're going to unleash unspeakable horrors upon the world." "Horrors," he countered, his eyes hardening. "No, Ethan, we are offering salvation. Humanity is lost, adrift in a sea of ignorance and self-destruction. The old ones are the only ones who can guide us, who can lead us to a better future." "That's insane," I shouted. "They're not saviors, they're destroyers. They'll consume us all." "You don't understand, Ethan," he said, his voice softening slightly. "You're one of us. You're a thorn. It's in your blood. You have the power to control the engine, to shape the destiny of humanity." "One of you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you mean? What am I?" He smiled, a slow, knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. "You are the key, Ethan, the final piece of the puzzle. You are the one who can awaken the old ones." He stepped closer, his hand reaching out towards me. I flinched, recoiling from his touch. "Don't touch me," I shouted. "I'm not one of you. I'll never be one of you." He sighed, his expression hardening. "I was hoping you would see reason, Ethan. I was hoping you would embrace your destiny, but it seems I was mistaken." He snapped his fingers. Two figures emerged from the shadows, flanking my father. They were dressed in black robes, their faces hidden beneath hoods. The keepers. "Take him," my father commanded, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. The keepers advanced towards me, their movements swift and silent. I knew that I couldn't fight them. I was outnumbered, outmatched. I looked around the chamber, searching for an escape route, but there was none. The gate of souls had closed behind us, sealing us in this alien prison. I was trapped. As the keepers reached for me, I remembered Sarah. I had to protect her. I had to get her out of here. "Run, Sarah," I shouted. "Get out of here, find a way back to Earth. Warn them about what's happening here." Sarah hesitated, her eyes filled with fear. But she nodded, understanding my plea. She scrambled to her feet and fled, disappearing into the shadows. The keepers turned their attention back to me, their grip tightening on my arms. They dragged me towards the engine, its humming growing louder, its energy more intense. "What are you going to do to me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "We're going to show you the truth, Ethan," my father said, his voice smooth, seductive. "We're going to awaken your power. We're going to make you one of us." They strapped me to a metal table, its surface cold and unforgiving. My father approached, holding a strange device in his hand. It was a small, metallic object, covered in intricate carvings, similar to the ones I had seen on the walls of the labyrinth. "This is the key, Ethan," he said, holding up the device. "This will unlock your potential, will reveal your true self." He pressed the device against my forehead. A surge of energy coursed through my body, searing my mind, rewriting my memories. Visions flooded my brain, images of ancient rituals, of dark gods, of a lineage stretching back through the ages. I saw myself not as a scientist, but as a priest, a warrior, a vessel for the old ones. I screamed, my body convulsing, as the device tore apart my consciousness, replacing it with something alien, something dark, something powerful. The world dissolved around me, replaced by a vision of swirling darkness, of ancient gods, of a future where humanity was enslaved, twisted, and remade in their image. I embraced the darkness, surrendering to its power, accepting my destiny. I was no longer Ethan Thorne, the scientist. I was something else, something more. I was a thorn, a keeper, the key to awakening the old ones. And I knew what I had to do. Chapter 9: Sarah's Flight and the Crumbling Fortress. The last vestige of Eris Thorne, the scientist, flickered and died within me, extinguished by the cold, relentless embrace of my father's revelation. As the new reality solidified, the screams of the past, the fight for survival, the fear, all receded, replaced by a chilling sense of purpose and a newfound, terrifying power. The chamber of the engine, once a place of dread, now felt like a throne room. The keepers, my new brethren, watched me with reverence, their hoods casting their faces in shadow, but their respect was palpable. My father, his eyes glowing with a strange, unnerving light, approached me, his hand resting on the device that had changed me. "Welcome to the truth, my son," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You are ready." I rose from the metal table, feeling the power surge through my veins, a dark, intoxicating energy that made me feel invincible. I looked at my hands, no longer recognizing the familiar skin and bones. They were instruments of a divine purpose, capable of unimaginable feats. "What is my purpose?" I asked, my voice devoid of the fear that once crippled me. "You are the key, Ethan," my father said. You are the one who can control the engine, who can open the final gate, who can summon the old ones." He gestured towards the massive engine, its sphere pulsing with an unholy light. "With your power, we can break the last seal, shatter the chains that bind them and bring them back to this world." I nodded, understanding dawning within me. The science, the research, the journey, all of it had been a carefully orchestrated plan, a means to an end. I was a tool, a weapon, a vessel, and now I was ready to fulfill my destiny. "What about Sarah?" I asked, a fleeting thought of the woman I had sworn to protect momentarily interrupting my newfound clarity. "What will happen to her?" My father shrugged, his expression indifferent. "She is of no consequence, a minor inconvenience at best. She will either be dealt with, or she will serve a purpose. The choice is hers." A surge of something akin to sadness, regret, flashed through me. The ghost of Aris Thorne, the scientist, momentarily resurfaced, mourning the loss of innocence. But the feeling was fleeting, quickly overwritten by the cold, calculated logic of my new reality. "Leave her be," I said, my voice steady. "Let her go." My father looked at me, his eyes searching. "Are you sure, Ethan? She knows too much." "I'm sure," I said, my voice firm. "She is no threat." My father hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "As you wish. But do not let your emotions cloud your judgment, my son. The mission comes first." I turned away from my father, focusing on the engine, on the power that pulsed within it. I reached out, my hand trembling with the anticipation of unleashing the old ones. "Let us begin," I said, my voice echoing through the chamber. While this was happening, Sarah was running. She had escaped the engine chamber, stumbling through the labyrinth, her heart pounding in her chest. The image of Ethan, transformed into a monster, burned in her mind, a nightmare she could not shake. She ran blindly, without direction, her only goal to put as much distance as possible between herself and the horrors she had witnessed. She had to warn the world. She had to tell them about the old ones, about the keepers, about the impending doom. She retraced her steps, navigating the maze of tunnels, the whispering voices growing fainter, the shadows less oppressive. She passed through chambers filled with alien artifacts, remembering what Ethan had told her, their purpose to channel power. Then she reached the Gate of Souls, the portal that had brought them to this terrifying world. It was closed now, the swirling vortex of light and energy replaced by a solid stone wall. She examined the wall, searching for a way to open it, a way to escape. She remembered the indentation Ethan had found, the device that had activated the portal. She searched the wall, her fingers tracing the surface, until she found a small, almost invisible crevice. She pressed the crevice, her heart pounding in her chest. The wall trembled, the carvings glowing brighter. A low humming sound filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. But nothing happened. The wall remained closed. The Gate of Souls would not open for her. Despair washed over her, a wave of hopelessness that threatened to drown her. She was trapped, alone, in a world of unimaginable horrors. She stumbled back, collapsing to the ground, her body shaking with fear and exhaustion. She was defeated. There was no escape. Then she remembered what Ethan had said before his transformation. Find a way back to the Icarus. She had to try. She had to fight. Even though she didn't know where she was going to try. She rose to her feet, her determination renewed, and started to run. She had to find a way to signal the Icarus, to alert the world. She returned to the Argonaut, the lifeless, metallic beast that had brought Ethan to this place. She fumbled with the rover, her fingers clumsy with panic. She managed to get the rover active, and in a desperate attempt she sent a message, praying someone out there would get it. Then she went back inside and started to move. She drove through the winding tunnels, knowing there was no one to guide her. She needed to get back to the Icarus, but she didn't know if there was enough fuel, or even if she was going the right way. As she drove, the structure around her began to crumble. The walls began to crack, the ceiling began to collapse, and the ground began to shake. The engine. They must be trying to do something with the engine. She knew she had to get out of there before it was too late. But the tunnels were collapsing, the ground was shaking, and the structure was coming down around her. Then the roof collapsed and the Argonaut was crushed. Sarah was dead. Chapter 10. The Awakening and the Stars of Madness. With Sarah's fate sealed, the last vestige of my former self faded into oblivion. All that remained was the thorn, the keeper, the instrument of the old ones. I turned my attention to the engine, its pulsing sphere beckoning me forward. The energy it radiated thrummed through my veins, a dark symphony of power and purpose. My father watched me with pride, his eyes gleaming with fanatic devotion. The keepers, shrouded in their black robes, stood silently by, their presence a testament to the dark order I now embraced. "Place your hand on the engine, my son," my father instructed, his voice resonating with anticipation. "Feel its power, its energy. Let it guide you, let it show you the way." I stepped forward, my movements deliberate, my gaze fixed on the sphere. I reached out my hand, no longer trembling with fear, but surging with an intoxicating sense of control. As my fingers brushed against the smooth, metallic surface of the engine, a surge of energy coursed through my body, overwhelming my senses. Visions flooded my mind, chaotic and terrifying, glimpses into a reality beyond human comprehension. I saw the old ones not as monstrous entities, but as beings of immense power and knowledge imprisoned for millennia, their potential untapped, their wisdom lost. I saw the keepers not as villains but as prophets, as visionaries, as the vanguard of a new age. And I saw myself not as a victim, but as a savior, as the key to unlocking their prison, to unleashing their power upon the world. The engine hummed louder, its pulsations growing stronger. The chamber around me began to tremble, the very fabric of reality warping and distorting. "The time is now, Ethan," my father urged, his voice filled with excitement. "Focus your will, channel your power, and open the final gate." I closed my eyes, focusing my mind, channeling the energy that flowed through me. I envisioned the chains that bound the old ones, the seals that imprisoned them, the barriers that separated their world from ours. And with a surge of will, I shattered them. The engine erupted with light, a blinding explosion that engulfed the chamber, tearing apart the fabric of space and time. A vortex opened before me, a swirling portal of darkness and chaos, a gateway to the realm of the Old Ones. A chorus of voices echoed through the chamber, not the whispering voices of the labyrinth, but something far more ancient, far more powerful. They were the voices of the Old Ones, resonating with a hunger that spanned millennia. The chamber began to shake violently, the ground cracking beneath my feet. The keepers fell to their knees, their faces contorted in ecstasy as the power of the Old Ones washed over them. My father stood beside me, his eyes shining with triumph. "We have done it, Ethan," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "We have freed them. We have saved humanity." I looked into the vortex, my heart filled with a sense of dread and anticipation. I knew that what was about to happen would change the world forever. Then, from the depths of the vortex, they emerged. They were not what I had expected. Not monstrous creatures, not grotesque figures, but beings of pure energy, of shimmering light, of unimaginable beauty. They were ancient, powerful, and terrifying. They floated towards me, their forms shifting and changing, their voices resonating in my mind. "Thank you, Ethan Thorne," they said, their voices a symphony of chaos and order. "You have freed us from our prison. You have opened the way for our return." I bowed my head, acknowledging their power, their authority. "What is your will?" I asked, my voice filled with reverence. "What do you require of us?" The Old Ones paused, their forms shimmering, their voices echoing in my mind. "We require sacrifice," they said, their voices growing colder, their forms more menacing. "We require the blood of the innocent, the tears of the righteous, the souls of the weak." I hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing my mind. Sacrifice. Was this truly the salvation I had been promised? "What will you do with them?" I asked, my voice trembling. The Old One smiled, a cruel, knowing smile that sent shivers down my spine. "We will consume them," they said, their voices filled with hunger. "We will absorb their essence, their power, their very souls, and with their strength we will conquer the earth." Terror gripped me, a cold, suffocating fear that threatened to overwhelm me. I had made a mistake. I had been deceived. The Old Ones were not saviors. They were destroyers, and I had unleashed them upon the world. I looked at my father, his eyes shining with triumph, his face contorted in fanatic devotion. He didn't understand. He didn't see the horror that was unfolding before him. "Father," I said, my voice filled with desperation, "we have to stop them. They're going to destroy everything." My father laughed, a loud, maniacal laugh that echoed through the chamber. "Destroy? No, Ethan, they are going to cleanse, they are going to purify, they are going to create a new world, a world worthy of their presence." He turned to the Old Ones, bowing before them, his voice trembling with reverence. "Take us," he said, "take our world, remake it in your image. We are yours to command." The Old Ones turned their attention to my father, their forms shimmering, their voices growing louder. "As you wish," they said. And with a surge of power, they consumed him. My father screamed, his body contorting, his face twisting in agony. His form dissolved, his essence absorbed by the old ones. I watched in horror, my mind reeling, my heart breaking. I had destroyed everything. I had unleashed a force that I could not control. The old ones turned their attention to me, their eyes fixed on my soul. "Now, Ethan Thorne," they said, "it is your turn." I knew what was coming. I knew that I was about to be consumed, to be absorbed, to be destroyed. But I was not afraid. I had nothing left to lose. I closed my eyes, embracing the darkness, accepting my fate. As the old ones approached, their forms shimmering, their voices echoing in my mind, I whispered a silent prayer. "Ilara," I said, "forgive me." Then the darkness consumed me, and I was gone. As the old ones completed their ritual, and the vortex expanded to consume the planet, they looked into the stars. Kepler-186f was now doomed, a world ready to be turned into what the old ones had imagined. But there were other stars, and the lights in them beckoned the old ones. Chapter 11: Whispers Across the Void. The rain lashed against the reinforced windows of the UNSA headquarters in Geneva, mirroring the storm raging within. General Petrov, his face etched with exhaustion and grim determination, stared at the holographic projection shimmering above the war table. It depicted Kepler-186f, once a vibrant jewel of potential, now shrouded in an ominous, swirling darkness. Confirmed loss of contact with the Icarus. A voice reported from the comms console, the words hanging heavy in the air. "All attempts at communication have failed. The last transmission was a garbled signal, barely intelligible." Petrov clenched his fist, his knuckles white. The Icarus mission had been a long shot, a desperate gamble to find evidence of extraterrestrial life, to offer humanity a glimmer of hope in an increasingly bleak future. Now, it seemed, that gamble had backfired spectacularly. "Anything on Dr. Thorne's last report?" Petrov asked, his voice tight. "Did he indicate what caused the loss of contact?" "His final report was unsettling, General," the voice replied, hesitation evident. "He spoke of unexplained anomalies, of strange energy signatures, of a growing sense of dread. He also mentioned hearing voices." Petrov frowned. "Voices? What kind of voices?" He described them as whispers, General, murmuring secrets, telling lies. He believed that they were coming from the planet itself. Petrov exchanged a grim look with Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead astrophysicist on the Icarus project. She had been a staunch advocate for the mission, a fervent believer in the potential of Kepler-186f. Now her face was pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and regret. "Hallucinations," Sharma muttered, shaking her head. "Stress-induced psychosis. The isolation, the pressure. It must have broken him." "Perhaps," Petrov said, his voice skeptical. "But what about the energy signatures? The unexplained anomalies? Those weren't hallucinations, Doctor. Something happened to the Icarus, and I intend to find out what." "We've analyzed the last transmission, General," another voice reported from the comms console. "We managed to isolate a few key phrases buried beneath the static. They were disturbing." "What did he say?" Petrov asked, his voice growing impatient. He spoke of old ones, the voice replied, hesitation evident, of keepers and of a gate of souls. Petrov exchanged another look with Sharma, his unease growing. The words were nonsensical, bordering on mythological. Run a search on those terms, Petrov commanded. See if anything comes up, anything at all. As the search began, a new alarm blared through the headquarters, red lights flashing, bathing the room in a strobe-like intensity. "What is it?" Petrov demanded, his voice sharp. "We've detected a massive energy surge emanating from Kepler-186f, the voice replied, his tone laced with panic. "It's unlike anything we've ever seen before. It's growing exponentially." Petrov stared at the holographic projection, his heart sinking. The darkness engulfing Kepler-186f was expanding, spreading like a plague. "What's the source of the energy surge?" Petrov asked, his voice trembling. "We don't know, General," the voice replied. "It seems to be originating from within the planet itself." Then the results of the search came in. The comms console beeped, displaying a series of documents, images, and articles. Petrov scanned the information, his eyes widening in disbelief. The old ones, keepers, the gate of souls, they weren't just figments of Dr. Thorne's imagination. They were real, or at least they were part of a very old, very disturbing mythology. The documents spoke of ancient beings banished to a distant realm, their power contained by powerful seals. They spoke of a secret society, the Keepers, dedicated to their return. And they spoke of a gate, a portal that could unleash them upon the world. "This is insane," Sharma muttered, shaking her head in disbelief. "This can't be real." "Can it?" Petrov asked, his voice grim. "Look at the projection, Doctor. Look at what's happening to Kepler-186f. Something is awakening and it's not good." "What do we do?" Sharma asked, her voice trembling. Petrov hesitated. The information was overwhelming, the implications terrifying. He had no idea what was happening on Kepler-186f or how to stop it. But he knew that he had to do something. He had to protect humanity, even if it meant facing the unimaginable. "Contact the Security Council," Petrov said, his voice firm. "Tell them what we know. Tell them that we're facing a threat unlike anything we've ever encountered before." He paused, his gaze fixed on the holographic projection, his heart filled with dread. "And tell them," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "that we're running out of time." And in the blackest corners of the web, in the hidden forums and encrypted channels, the whispers began to spread. The keepers were celebrating. The old ones had returned. The stars were aligning. The age of humanity was coming to an end, and a new era of madness had begun. Chapter 12. The Whispers Consume. The sensation of being consumed was unexpected. Not a searing pain, not a terrifying void, but a merging, a blending, a becoming. The old ones weren't simply devouring me. They were integrating me, incorporating my consciousness into their collective. The memories, the knowledge, the emotions of countless eons washed over me, overwhelming my senses. I saw the universe in a way I could never have imagined, its vastness stretching out before me, its beauty interwoven with its horror. I understood the cycles of creation and destruction, the ebb and flow of power, the intricate tapestry of existence. I was no longer Ethan Thorne, the individual, the scientist, the grieving widower. I was a fragment of something far greater, a piece of a cosmic puzzle, a part of the old ones. And with that understanding came a newfound purpose, a terrifying clarity. My mission wasn't to save humanity, but to subjugate it, to prepare it for the coming of the old ones, to transform it into a vessel for their will. My will. I opened my eyes, no longer seeing the engine chamber but the vast expanse of space, the swirling galaxies, the countless stars that beckoned me forward. I felt the power of the old ones coursing through me, the ability to warp reality, to manipulate matter, to control life and death. I turned to the keepers who were kneeling before me, their faces contorted in ecstasy, their bodies trembling with devotion. They were my followers, my disciples, my instruments. "Rise," I commanded, my voice resonating with the power of the old ones. "The time has come. We have work to do." The keepers rose to their feet, their eyes shining with fanatic fervor. They awaited my instructions, their loyalty absolute. "Prepare the fleet," I said, my voice echoing through the chamber. "Ready the vessels for our journey to Earth." The keepers bowed their heads, acknowledging my command. They turned and departed, their movements swift and efficient. I turned back to the vortex, the gateway to the realm of the old ones. It was expanding, growing larger with each passing moment, its darkness threatening to engulf the entire planet. "What about Kepler-186f?" I asked, my voice echoing through the emptiness. "What will become of this world?" The old ones responded, their voices resonating in my mind. "It has served its purpose," they said. "It is now a gateway, a bridge to the stars. It will be consumed, transformed, and reborn as something new." A surge of sadness, a fleeting memory of the scientist I once was, flickered within me. I had doomed this world, destroyed its potential, extinguished its light. But the feeling was fleeting, quickly overwritten by the cold, calculated logic of the old ones. "Let it be done," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. The vortex expanded, engulfing the chamber, consuming everything in its path. Kepler-186f was no more. It was now a part of the old ones, a fragment of their vast, incomprehensible consciousness. As the vortex consumed the planet, the ships began to arrive. Vessels of strange, alien design, constructed from materials I had never seen before, powered by technologies I could barely comprehend. They were the vanguard of the old ones, the instruments of their conquest, the harbingers of a new era of madness. I boarded the lead ship, my body vibrating with anticipation. I looked back at the swirling vortex, the remnants of Kepler-186f, as we prepared to depart. "Onwards to Earth," I said, my voice echoing through the ship. "Let us bring enlightenment to humanity. Let us transform them into vessels for the old ones." The ship surged forward, piercing the vortex, entering the void of space. We were on our way. As we traveled through the vast emptiness, I could feel the Old Ones expanding their influence, reaching out across the cosmos, touching the minds of humanity, whispering their secrets, planting seeds of doubt and fear. The whispers were spreading, consuming the earth, and soon the madness would begin. The journey was long, but time had no meaning to the Old Ones. Light years melted away, galaxies became mere specks of dust. I had all the time in the world. I waited patiently for the moment to arrive, for the moment when we would reach Earth, when we would unleash the Old Ones upon humanity. And as we drew closer to our destination, I could feel their anticipation growing, their hunger intensifying. The conquest was at hand. Humanity was doomed. Chapter 13: Seeds of Doubt and the Rising Tide. The Situation Room at UNSA headquarters was a crucible of tension. General Petrov, his face gaunt with fatigue, surveyed the assembled faces. Scientists, military strategists, politicians, all grappling with the impossible reality of the Old Ones. Satellite imagery confirms the departure of a fleet of unknown vessels from the Kepler-186f system, a voice reported from the comms console. Their trajectory, it's directed towards Earth. A collective gasp filled the room. The Old Ones were coming. "How long do we have?" Petrov asked, his voice tight. "Estimates vary, General," another voice replied. "But based on their current velocity, we project they will reach Earth orbit within 6 months. 6 months. A blink of an eye in cosmic terms, a lifetime in the face of impending doom." "What do we know about these vessels?" Petrov asked. "Their capabilities, their weapons." "Nothing, General," the voice replied, a note of desperation in his tone. "They are unlike anything we have ever encountered. Their technology, it's beyond our comprehension." Dr. Anya Sharma stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "We've been analyzing the data we recovered from Dr. Thorne's last transmissions," she said. "We've identified a few key phrases, terms that seem to be associated with the Old Ones. We're trying to decipher their meaning, to understand their significance." "What have you found?" Petrov asked, his voice urgent. "The term that keeps recurring is whispers," Sharma said. "It seems to be a method of communication, a way for the Old Ones to influence the minds of humans." "Influence?" Petrov asked, his brow furrowed. "What kind of influence?" "We're not sure," Sharma said. "But we suspect that they are planting seeds of doubt, fear, and discord. They are trying to weaken our defenses, to undermine our resolve." Petrov nodded, understanding dawning within him. The Old Ones weren't just coming to conquer Earth, they were coming to corrupt it. They were attacking our minds, our souls, before they even set foot on our soil. "We need to combat these whispers," Petrov said, his voice firm. "We need to find a way to protect ourselves from their influence." "We're working on it, General," Sharma said. "We're developing countermeasures, technologies that can shield our minds from their attacks. But it's a race against time. We don't know if we can succeed." As the scientists worked tirelessly to develop a defense against the whispers, the military strategists focused on a more immediate threat: the incoming fleet. "We need to prepare for war," Petrov said, his voice resonating with grim determination. "We need to mobilize our forces, to strengthen our defenses, to be ready to meet the old ones when they arrive." The global defense network was put on high alert, space-based weapons platforms were activated, and planetary defense systems were prepared for launch. The Earth braced itself for the coming storm. But the greatest threat came not from the stars but from within. The whispers were spreading, infecting the minds of humanity, sowing seeds of doubt and fear. Conspiracy theories flourished, fueled by the Old One's influence. Governments were accused of concealing the truth, of collaborating with the enemy. Trust eroded, alliances crumbled, and society began to unravel. Riots broke out in major cities, fueled by misinformation and paranoia. Religious fanatics preached the coming of the apocalypse, calling for repentance and sacrifice. The world was descending into chaos. Petrov watched the unraveling with growing despair. He knew that the old ones were winning, that their plan was working. They were turning humanity against itself, weakening it from within, preparing it for subjugation. "We're losing," Petrov said, his voice filled with anguish. "We can't stop them. They're too powerful, too insidious." Sharma shook her head, her eyes filled with a spark of defiance. "We can't give up, General," she said. "We have to keep fighting. We have to believe that we can win." Petrov looked at her, his heart filled with a flicker of hope. Sharma was right. They couldn't give up. They had to keep fighting, even if it seemed hopeless. "What can we do?" Petrov asked, his voice regaining its strength. "How can we stop them from destroying us?" Sharma hesitated, her eyes darting around the room, as if she were afraid of being overheard. "There may be one way," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "but it's dangerous, and it's almost certainly insane." "Tell me," Petrov said, his voice urgent. Sharma took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. "We need to find the gate of souls," she said. "We need to understand how it works, and we need to find a way to close it." A stunned silence filled the room. The gate of souls, the mythological portal to the realm of the old ones. Was Sharma suggesting that they venture into the heart of the enemy's territory? "That's impossible," Petrov said, shaking his head. "We don't know where it is. We don't know how to get there. And even if we did, we wouldn't stand a chance against the old ones." "I know," Sharma said, "but it's the only chance we have. If we can close the gate of souls, we can sever their connection to our world. We can weaken them, perhaps even defeat them." Petrov hesitated. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but what choice did they have? "All right," Petrov said, his voice firm. "We'll do it. We'll find the gate of souls. But we'll need a team of experts, people who are willing to risk everything." "I know just the people," Sharma said, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "People who have faced the darkness before and survived." And as the world descended into chaos, as the whispers grew louder, as the fleet of the old ones drew closer, a small team of heroes prepared to embark on a suicide mission, a desperate attempt to save humanity from the brink of destruction. The tide of madness was rising, and all that stood against it were a few brave souls, armed with nothing but hope, courage, and a desperate prayer. Chapter 14, Shadows of the Past. General Petrov surveyed the assembled group in the briefing room, their faces illuminated by the holographic display of Earth, fractured and consumed by growing pockets of unrest. He knew he was asking for the impossible, a mission so improbable it bordered on suicidal. These individuals were his last, best hope. First was Dr. Anya Sharma herself. Driven, brilliant, and haunted by the loss of Dr. Thorne, she carried the weight of the Icarus mission's failure on her shoulders. She was fueled by a potent mix of guilt, grief, and a desperate need for redemption. Next, Captain Eva Rostova, a hardened veteran of countless Black Ops missions. A master of infiltration and combat, she possessed a steely resolve and an unwavering loyalty to humanity. She had seen the darkness firsthand, and she was prepared to face it again. Then there was Marcus Cole, a former hacker and cybersecurity expert. He had operated in the shadows for years, uncovering government secrets and exposing corporate corruption. He was a master of deception and information warfare, a valuable asset in the fight against the Old One's influence. And finally, there was Father Michael O'Connell, a disgraced priest haunted by his past. He had once been a devout man of God, but he had witnessed horrors that shattered his faith. Now, he sought redemption by fighting against the darkness, using his knowledge of ancient lore and religious rituals to combat the Old Ones. You have all been chosen for this mission because of your unique skills and experiences, Petrov began, his voice grave. We are facing a threat unlike anything humanity has ever encountered. The Old Ones are coming, and they are determined to destroy us. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Our only hope is to find the Gate of Souls, the portal through which they plan to enter our world, he continued. We need to understand how it works, and we need to find a way to close it. That's impossible, General, Rostova said, her voice skeptical. The Gate of Souls is just a myth, a legend. Perhaps, Petrov said, but Dr. Thorne believed it was real, and he paid the ultimate price for his belief. We can't afford to dismiss it as a fairy tale. Where do we even begin? Cole asked, his brow furrowed. We don't know where the Gate of Souls is or how to find it. We have a few leads, Sharma said, stepping forward. Dr. Thorne mentioned a series of ancient texts, books that he believed contained clues to the gate's location. We need to find those books, and we need to decipher their secrets. What kind of books are we talking about? O'Connell asked, his eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. Religious texts, occult grimoires, forgotten histories, Sharma said. Anything that might shed light on the Old Ones and their plans. I know a few places we can start looking, O'Connell said, his voice low. Libraries, monasteries, ancient ruins, places where knowledge has been hidden for centuries. We'll split up into teams, Petrov said. Sharma and O'Connell will focus on researching the ancient texts. Rostova and Cole will gather intelligence, track down any leads that might help us locate the Gate of Souls. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembled faces. This mission is dangerous, he said. You will be facing unimaginable horrors. You may not come back alive. But the fate of humanity rests on your shoulders, he continued. If we fail, the old ones will consume our world, and everything we hold dear will be lost. Are you willing to accept this mission? Petrov asked, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Sharma, Rostova, Cole, and O'Connell exchanged glances, their faces reflecting a mix of fear and determination. "Yes, General," they said in unison. "We're ready." Petrov nodded, relief washing over him. He had assembled his team. Now all they had to do was find the Gate of Souls and save the world from the brink of destruction. As they prepared to embark on their respective missions, each member of the team grappled with their own personal demons. Sharma struggled with the guilt of leading Thorn to his doom. Rostova battled the trauma of past battles. Cole wrestled with his conscience, and O'Connell sought to regain his lost faith. They were all broken, damaged, haunted by their past, but they were also resilient, determined, and fiercely loyal to humanity. They were the shadows of the past, fighting to protect the future. And in the face of unimaginable horror, they were ready to stand tall and face the darkness together. With the team on the move, this was the first ray of hope he had felt in days. Even if they failed, humanity had a chance to be remembered, and for that small mercy, he would see this all the way through. Chapter 15. Whispers in the Vatican Library. The chill of the Roman evening seeped into Anya's bones as she and Father O'Connell stood before the imposing walls of Vatican City. The rain, a relentless drizzle, slicked the cobblestones and cast long, distorted shadows from the towering buildings. A palpable sense of history, both sacred and profane, hung heavy in the air. "You sure about this, Father?" Anya asked, pulling her coat tighter. "I'm not exactly on the Vatican's Christmas card list considering my scientific inclinations." O'Connell, his weathered face etched with a knowing smile, adjusted his collar. "Have faith, Dr. Sharma. The Church has secrets, yes, but it also safeguards knowledge. Knowledge that may be vital to our survival." He produced a small, tarnished silver key, its intricate carvings barely visible in the dim light. "An old contact, a librarian with unconventional interests. He owes me a favor." With a practiced ease, O'Connell unlocked a small, unassuming gate tucked away in a shadowed corner of the Vatican walls. They slipped inside, the gate closing silently behind them. The world transformed. The bustling city outside faded away, replaced by a hushed, reverential atmosphere. They walked through a labyrinth of narrow corridors, past ancient tapestries and faded frescoes, until they reached a heavy oak door, guarded by a single, elderly Swiss guard. O'Connell exchanged a few hushed words with the guard, displaying the silver key. The guard, his expression unreadable, nodded silently and unlocked the door, granting them access to the Vatican Library. Anya gasped as she stepped inside. The library was a vast, cavernous space, filled with rows upon rows of ancient books, manuscripts, and scrolls. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and leather, a testament to centuries of accumulated knowledge. "This is incredible," Anya whispered, her eyes wide with awe. "Indeed," O'Connell said, his voice hushed. But we're not here to admire the architecture, Dr. Sharma. We have work to do. He led her through the main reading room, past scholars poring over ancient texts, until they reached a hidden door concealed behind a bookshelf. He used the silver key to unlock the door, revealing a narrow, winding staircase that descended into the depths of the library. "The secret archives," O'Connell said, his voice low, "where the church keeps its most dangerous secrets." Anya hesitated, a sense of foreboding washing over her. She had a bad feeling about this. "Are you sure about this, Father?" she asked. "We could get into serious trouble if we're caught down there." "We have no choice, Dr. Sharma," O'Connell said, his face grim. "The fate of the world depends on what we find down there." He started down the staircase, Anya following close behind. The air grew colder, the silence more oppressive. The flickering light of their flashlights danced across the damp stone walls, revealing strange symbols and cryptic inscriptions. They reached the bottom of the staircase, emerging into a vast, subterranean chamber. The chamber was filled with shelves upon shelves of ancient books, manuscripts, and scrolls, many of them bound in human skin. Anya gasped, recoiling in horror. "What is this place?" she whispered. "The repository of forbidden knowledge," O'Connell said, his voice grim. "The place where the church hides the things it doesn't want the world to see." They began their search, scanning the shelves for any texts that might shed light on the old ones. Hours passed, the silence broken only by the rustling of pages and the occasional whisper. Anya felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to move, the whispers seemed to grow louder. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking in the darkness, waiting for them to make a mistake. Then O'Connell stopped, his eyes fixed on a particular shelf. He reached out and pulled down a heavy, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. "I think I've found something," he said, his voice trembling. "The Liber Malorum, the Book of Evil. It's said to contain the secrets of the Old Ones, their origins, their powers, and their plans." He opened the book, his eyes scanning the ancient text. Anya peered over his shoulder, her heart pounding in her chest. The text was written in Latin, but it was unlike anything she had ever seen before. The words seemed to writhe and twist, their meaning obscured by strange symbols and cryptic annotations. "What does it say?" Anya asked, her voice barely a whisper. O'Connell hesitated, his face pale. "It speaks of beings of immense power, banished to a distant realm for their transgressions," he said. "It speaks of a gate, a portal that can unleash them upon the world." "The Gate of Souls," Anya whispered. O'Connell nodded, his eyes fixed on the text. "It says that the gate is located in a place where the veil between worlds is thin, a place where the boundaries of reality are blurred." "Where?" Anya pressed, her voice urgent. "Where is this place?" O'Connell's face grew paler, his eyes widening in terror. It says it's located beneath the earth," he whispered, "in a place called Agartha." Anya's blood ran cold. Agartha, the legendary city beneath the earth, the mythical home of lost civilizations and ancient secrets. "That's just a legend," Anya said, shaking her head in disbelief. It can't be real. O'Connell looked up from the book, his eyes filled with fear. I don't know, he said, but I have a feeling that we're about to find out. As he spoke, the chamber began to shake, the shelves rattling, the books tumbling to the floor. The whispers grew louder, coalescing into a chorus of voices, chanting in an unknown language. The shadows seemed to deepen, to coalesce, to take on a life of their own. Something was coming, something dark, something terrible. We have to get out of here, Anya said, grabbing O'Connell's arm. Now. They turned and fled, racing through the chamber back towards the staircase. But it was too late. The shadows surrounded them, engulfing them, their icy touch sending shivers down their spines. The voices grew louder, more insistent, their whispers filling their minds. They were trapped. The old ones had found them. Chapter 16. Agartha beckons. The shadows closed in, not as simple darkness, but as a tangible presence, a suffocating weight that pressed down on Anya and Father O'Connell. The whispers intensified, becoming a cacophony of voices promising power, knowledge, and oblivion. O'Connell clutched the Liber Malorum to his chest, his knuckles white, reciting prayers in a desperate attempt to ward off the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, the chamber began to spin, the ancient books blurring into a chaotic vortex. Anya felt a sickening lurch in her stomach as the floor vanished beneath her feet. They were falling, plunging into an abyss of swirling darkness. Then, as abruptly as it began, the fall ceased. Anya landed hard on a soft, mossy surface, the air filled with a strange, bioluminescent glow. She looked around, her jaw dropping in astonishment. They were in a vast cavern, illuminated by glowing fungi and shimmering crystals. Towering trees, their branches laden with luminous fruit, stretched towards a ceiling that was miles above them. Waterfalls cascaded down moss-covered cliffs, feeding into a crystal-clear river that snaked through the cavern floor. This was Agartha, the legendary city beneath the earth, a world of unimaginable beauty and ancient secrets. Incredible, Anya whispered, her voice filled with awe. It's real. O'Connell, still clutching the Liber Malorum, slowly rose to his feet, his eyes wide with disbelief. I can't believe it, he stammered. It's more magnificent than I ever imagined. But their wonder was short-lived. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, they began to notice unsettling details. The trees were gnarled and twisted, their branches resembling skeletal arms. The glowing fungi pulsed with an unnatural light, casting eerie shadows that danced across the cavern walls. And the air was filled with a faint, metallic tang, the scent of blood and ozone. They reached the river bank, the crystal-clear water reflecting their faces back at them. But the reflections were distorted, as if something was tampering with their perception. Anya could see her own face twisting into a grotesque caricature, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Something's not right, she said, her voice uneasy. This place, it's beautiful, but it's also corrupt. O'Connell nodded, his face grim. The Liber Malorum warned of this, he said. Agartha is not a paradise. It's a prison, a place where the old ones have twisted and corrupted everything in their path. They continued along the riverbank, their senses on high alert. They passed through ancient ruins, crumbling temples and forgotten cities, their architecture reflecting a blend of different cultures and eras. It was as if Agartha had been built by countless civilizations, each adding their own unique stamp to the subterranean world. Then they heard it, a faint echoing sound carried on the wind, whispering. The whispers were faint at first, barely audible above the sound of the rushing water. But as they ventured deeper into Agartha, they grew louder, more insistent. They swirled around them, murmuring secrets, telling lies, weaving a tapestry of deceit and despair. Anya tried to block them out to focus on the task at hand, but the whispers were relentless, chipping away at her resolve, filling her mind with doubts and fears. "We need to find the Gate of Souls," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to stop the old ones from escaping." "The Liber Malorum says that the gate is located in the heart of Agartha," O'Connell said, "in a place called the Obsidian Citadel." "The Obsidian Citadel?" Anya asked, her brow furrowed. "What is that?" "It's said to be the seat of power in Agartha," O'Connell said. "The place where the Old Ones exert their influence, where they control this subterranean world." "Then that's where we need to go," Anya said, her voice firm. "We need to infiltrate the Obsidian Citadel, and we need to find a way to close the Gate of Souls." They continued their journey, the whispers growing louder, the shadows growing darker. They encountered strange creatures, twisted and corrupted by the Old Ones, grotesque humanoids with glowing eyes, monstrous beasts with razor-sharp claws, and ethereal beings that seemed to be made of pure energy. They fought them off, relying on their wits, their skills, and their courage. Anya used her scientific knowledge to identify their weaknesses, while O'Connell used his knowledge of ancient lore to ward them off with prayers and holy symbols. Despite their efforts, the journey took its toll. Anya grew increasingly paranoid, distrusting everything and everyone. O'Connell struggled to maintain his faith, his belief in God wavering in the face of the overwhelming darkness. They were both on the verge of breaking, their minds and bodies pushed to their limits, but they knew that they couldn't give up. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. Finally, after days of perilous travel, they reached their destination. In the distance, looming above the cavern floor, they saw it. The Obsidian Citadel. A colossal fortress constructed from black, polished stone, its towers reaching towards the sky like jagged teeth. It pulsed with an unholy energy, radiating an aura of dread and despair. The whispers reached a fever pitch, the voices chanting in unison, their words echoing in their minds. "Welcome," they whispered, "welcome to your doom." Anya and O'Connell exchanged a look, their faces pale but resolute. They knew that they were walking into a trap. They knew that they might not come back alive. But they had come too far to turn back now. They had to see this through to the end. Taking a deep breath, they started towards the Obsidian Citadel, their hearts filled with fear and determination. The heart of darkness awaited. Chapter 17: The Obsidian Throne. The approach to the Obsidian Citadel was a descent into madness. The ground beneath their feet became slick with a viscous black fluid that pulsed with a faint internal light. The air grew thick and heavy, saturated with the stench of decay and the metallic tang of blood. Twisted, skeletal trees lined the path, their branches reaching out like grasping claws, adorned with what Anya could only describe as trophies. Skulls, bones, and desiccated bodies hung from the branches, whispering silent warnings to those who dared to trespass. The whispers intensified, no longer just voices, but a torrent of thoughts, emotions, and memories, none of them their own. Anya felt her sanity fraying at the edges, her mind bombarded with the pain, fear, and despair of countless victims. O'Connell, clutching his rosary, stumbled along, his face contorted in a silent battle against the encroaching darkness. They reached the gates of the citadel, massive obsidian slabs adorned with grotesque carvings that seemed to shift and writhe before their eyes. Two towering figures, clad in black armor, stood guard, their faces hidden behind skull-like masks. "Halt!" one of the figures boomed, his voice a guttural growl. "State your purpose." Anya stepped forward, trying to project an aura of confidence she didn't feel. "We seek audience with the master of this citadel," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The figures exchanged a glance. "The master does not grant audience to mortals," one of them said. "Turn back or face the consequences." Anya drew her weapon, a modified pulse pistol she had scavenged from a long-forgotten UNSA outpost. "We're not turning back," she said, her voice hard. "We have come too far." The figures lunged, their movements surprisingly swift and agile. Anya fired her pistol, the energy blast searing through the air, but the figures seemed unfazed. Their armor absorbed the blasts, dissipating the energy before it could cause any damage. O'Connell, despite his age and frail appearance, surprised Anya with his ferocity. He brandished his crucifix like a weapon, chanting prayers in Latin, the holy words creating a shimmering aura that repelled the approaching figures. "Back, demons!" he roared, his voice filled with righteous fury. "I command you in the name of God." The figures recoiled from the crucifix, hissing and spitting like cornered animals. Anya seized the opportunity, firing a concentrated burst of energy at one of the figures, hitting him in the head. The figure staggered, his mask shattering, revealing a face that was barely human. It was a grotesque parody of a human face, twisted and distorted by the influence of the old ones. The figure collapsed, the other figure roaring in rage. Anya and O'Connell fought back to back, their skills complementing each other, their determination fueled by the knowledge that the fate of the world rested on their shoulders. They managed to defeat the remaining figure, his body collapsing in a heap of black armor. But they knew that this was just the beginning. They had breached the gates of the citadel, but the true test lay ahead. They entered the citadel, stepping into a vast, echoing hall. The walls were lined with obsidian columns, their surfaces covered in grotesque carvings. The air was thick with the scent of incense and decay. As they ventured deeper into the hall, they began to encounter more guardians, twisted humanoids, grotesque beasts, and ethereal beings that seemed to be made of pure shadow. They fought their way through them, their resolve weakening with each passing battle. Finally, they reached their destination. At the end of the hall, atop a towering dais, sat a figure on a throne of obsidian. The figure was tall and gaunt, clad in black robes that seemed to absorb the light around him. His face was hidden beneath a hooded cowl, but Anya could feel his gaze piercing through her, scrutinizing her, judging her. "Welcome, mortals," the figure said, his voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the hall. "I have been expecting you." Anya stepped forward, her weapon raised. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What do you want?" The figure chuckled, a low, chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. "I am the master of this citadel," he said. "I am the shepherd of the lost, the guardian of the gate, and I want everything." He raised his hand, and the shadows in the hall seemed to deepen, to coalesce, to take on a life of their own. They swirled around Anya and O'Connell, threatening to engulf them. "You cannot stop me," the figure said, his voice growing stronger, more confident. "The old ones are coming, and when they do, humanity will be destroyed." Anya steeled her resolve, her fear replaced by a surge of defiance. "We're not going to let that happen," she said, her voice firm. "We're going to close the gate of souls, and we're going to stop you." The figure laughed, a mocking sound that echoed through the hall. "You are but insects," he said. "You are powerless against the might of the old ones." He rose from his throne, his robes swirling around him like shadows. "Prepare to face your doom," he said. The battle had begun. Chapter 18: The Price of Hope. The master of the obsidian citadel moved with unnatural speed, a blur of black robes and malevolent energy. Anya fired her pulse pistol, but the energy blasts were deflected by an invisible shield surrounding him. O'Connell chanted prayers, his crucifix glowing with a holy light, but the master seemed unfazed. "Your faith is weak, priest," the master hissed, his voice filled with contempt. "It cannot protect you from the power of the old ones." He unleashed a torrent of dark energy, sending Anya and O'Connell flying backward. They slammed against the obsidian walls, their bodies racked with pain. Anya struggled to her feet, her head spinning. The master loomed over her, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. "It is pointless to resist," he said, his voice a seductive whisper. "Join us, and you will be rewarded with power beyond your wildest dreams." Anya spat in his face. "I'd rather die," she said, her voice filled with defiance. The master chuckled, wiping the spittle from his face. "Then so be it," he said. He raised his hand, preparing to unleash another torrent of dark energy. But before he could, O'Connell intervened. "Begone, demon!" O'Connell roared, charging towards the master, his crucifix held high. The master turned his attention to O'Connell, his eyes narrowing in anger. "You dare defy me, priest," he hissed. He unleashed a blast of dark energy, striking O'Connell in the chest. The priest staggered backward, his body convulsing, his face contorted in agony. Anya watched in horror as O'Connell collapsed to the ground, his body lifeless. A wave of grief and rage washed over her. "You monster!" she screamed, lunging towards the master. The master simply smiled, sidestepping her attack with ease. "Your emotions are your weakness, human," he said. "They make you predictable." He grabbed Anya by the throat, lifting her off the ground. "Now you will join your friend in oblivion," he said, his voice a chilling whisper. Anya struggled to breathe, her vision blurring. She could feel the Master's power draining her, stealing her life force. Just as she was about to lose consciousness, she remembered something. The Liber Malorum. O'Connell had been clutching it to his chest when he was attacked. It was still lying on the ground near his body. With a surge of adrenaline, Anya reached out her hand, grabbing the book. She opened it, her eyes scanning the ancient text. The Master hissed, recoiling in horror. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Anya ignored him, continuing to read the text. She remembered what O'Connell had said about the Gate of Souls being located in a place where the veil between worlds was thin. She remembered his description of the Obsidian Citadel, the seat of power in Agartha, the place where the Old Ones exerted their influence. And then she understood. The Gate of Souls wasn't just a portal. It was a construct, a creation of the Old Ones, powered by their energy, sustained by their will. And the Obsidian Citadel was the key to its operation. She closed the book, her eyes narrowing in determination. "I know how to close the gate," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The Master laughed, a mocking sound that echoed through the hall. "You are too late, human," he said. "The Old Ones are already on their way. Nothing can stop them now." Anya smiled, a cold, determined smile that sent shivers down his spine. "We'll see about that," she said. She raised her pulse pistol, aiming it at the obsidian throne. The Master's eyes widened in alarm. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I'm going to destroy your power source," Anya said. "I'm going to cut off your connection to the Old Ones, and I'm going to close the Gate of Souls." She fired the pistol, unleashing a torrent of energy at the obsidian throne. The throne shuddered, the dark energy radiating from it flickering erratically. The Master screamed in rage, unleashing a blast of dark energy at Anya. But she was ready for him. She ducked behind a nearby column, the energy blast shattering the stone. She emerged from behind the column, firing her pistol again, targeting the intricate carvings on the throne. The carvings began to crumble, the dark energy flowing from them diminishing. The Master grew desperate, unleashing a torrent of dark energy that filled the hall, tearing apart the walls and shattering the floor. Anya dodged and weaved, avoiding the energy blasts, her focus unwavering. She fired her pistol again and again, systematically destroying the obsidian throne, disrupting the flow of energy, severing the Master's connection to the Old Ones. As the throne crumbled, the Master began to weaken. His movements slowed, his power diminished. His eyes lost their unholy glow, replaced by a flicker of fear. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This cannot be." Anya advanced towards him, her pulse pistol raised, her face set in a determined grimace. "It's over," she said. "The Old Ones are finished." She fired the pistol, unleashing a final blast of energy that struck the Master in the chest. He screamed, his body contorting, his robes dissolving into ash. He collapsed to the ground, his body lifeless. The obsidian throne was destroyed, the Gate of Souls was severed, and the master of the citadel was defeated. Anya stood there, panting, her body aching, her mind exhausted. The hall was a scene of devastation. The walls shattered, the floor cracked, the air thick with dust and debris. But she had done it. She had closed the gate of souls. She had saved humanity. As the last vestiges of the master's power faded away, the citadel began to crumble, the walls collapsing, the floor giving way. Anya knew that she had to escape before the entire structure came crashing down around her. She turned and fled, racing through the hall back towards the entrance. But as she ran, she noticed something. A faint, shimmering light emanating from the ruins of the obsidian throne. Curiosity piqued. Anya hesitated, torn between her desire to escape and her need to understand what she had just witnessed. She turned back, approaching the ruins of the throne, her pulse pistol raised. As she drew closer, she saw it. A small, crystalline shard, glowing with an ethereal light. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before, pulsating with an energy that seemed to resonate with her very being. She reached out her hand, touching the shard. A surge of energy coursed through her body, filling her with a sense of peace, of understanding, of purpose. Visions flooded her mind. Images of a distant past, of ancient civilizations, of beings of immense power and wisdom. She saw the old ones, not as monstrous entities, but as guardians, as protectors, as the keepers of a cosmic balance. She understood that they had been corrupted, twisted by the darkness that had consumed them. But she also understood that their original purpose had been noble, that they had once sought to guide humanity towards a brighter future. And then she realized something else. The shard was a key to unlocking the old one's true potential, a key to restoring their lost wisdom. She looked around the crumbling citadel, her heart filled with a sense of sadness and hope. She had defeated the master. She had closed the gate of souls, but she had also discovered a truth that could change everything. She knew that her journey was far from over. She knew that she had a new purpose, a new mission. To find a way to redeem the old ones, to restore their lost wisdom, and to guide humanity towards a future where both could coexist in peace. She took the shard, clutching it tightly in her hand, and turned towards the exit, her heart filled with hope. As she fled the crumbling citadel, she knew that she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. But she also knew that she was not alone. The spirit of O'Connell, the memory of Thorn, and the echoes of the old ones were with her, guiding her, protecting her. She was ready to face the future, whatever it may hold. For she knew that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. And as Anya emerged from the ruins of Agartha, with the shard in her hand, she started to whisper prayers to the lost souls, as a bright light emerged from the stars. The end.